Hello, everyone. I couldn't help but notice just some of the strange, bizarre behavior going on in Colorado, um, especially in the last couple of years. But as you know, the first mass shooting ever, really in the modern era, was right here in Columbine, right next to Littleton. But just recently, so we have the Loveland police. The woman with dementia had her arm broken and shoulder dislocated. Uh, the police officers then went back to the station, watched the video, laughed about it, thought it was hilarious, left her in a cell for 6 hours with a broken arm, dislocated shoulder, without medical care. Um, a number of them resigned, and several of them were charged. A Loveland police officer just in the same city just uh, fatally shot a puppy in the face and killed it. These people were sitting in a parking lot letting their dogs out. The cop pulls in, sees the dog laying right here. I'm not even going to show you the footage because it's just infuriating. He could have just stayed in his car. Obviously, he knows the dogs are going to come running up to him. There's two dogs. The dog comes running up, murders the dog, and then won't let the people near the dog. Like sadistic, evil behavior. He's like, stay away, the dog's injured, it's going to bite you. The woman's hysterical. And then they write them tickets and retaliate against them because they say we're going to go to the media and tell everybody. I mean, just evil. I mean, you're not just talking like your run-of-the-mill evil that we see out of police officers these days, but like unbelievable, over-the-top evil. Then, of course, we got the 75-year-old guy. This is in Colorado Springs.
Video just released shows police knocking on the neighbor's door.
75-year-old.
They didn't announce that they were the police.
Clark answers wearing just his boxers.
What do you want?
Police react
He
quickly.
comes to the door, doesn't know it's the police. He's got some sort of a weapon. They kick him. They tell him to put it down. He does.
See Clark placing the sword on a bookshelf.
Get on the ground!
No.
Then an officer tases Clark, sending him reeling to the floor.
Okay, part's unconscious.
Clark is out cold as the officers drag him into the hallway.
Taser deployed. Party came out with a machete.
He's placed in handcuffs. Then, a stunning moment. You can see one cop entering Clark's apartment and grabbing the sword. Then, he drops it near the victim. You can hear it hit the floor. Was he planting evidence? The officer then appears to take a photograph of the scene with his cell phone. Sarah Shelke is the victim's attorney.
Once he is unconscious, the police set to making the scene look like something that justified tasing a 75-year-old man.
Now, the officer who moved the weapon has been fired by...
Tase the 75-year-old. Don't announce that you're the police. Tase him. Move the thing he brought to the door to defend himself. This is all just recently and all within a very small area of Colorado. That's Idaho Springs is somewhere right there. Idaho Springs. That's where the guy, 75-year-old, was tased. Loveland's right up here. This is a relatively small area. Now, there's a road rage problem going on. You're going to notice a theme here: odd behavior, irritability. National Triway, blah, blah, blah. According to data, Colorado ranked second deadliest state per capita for road rage incidents. Now, there's a lot of odd behavior going on here that I just find very noteworthy. And then, of course, this guy here, Chris Watts, that killed his pregnant wife and two daughters. I think, what does the judge say? It's the most inhumane and vicious crime the judge has ever seen. So this is just in the last 2 years. You're seeing essentially the worst things I've ever seen police officers do. I mean, and obviously, they beat Rodney King senseless for 10 minutes. I mean, that's horrific. But we're seeing, like, now they're doing it to white people and puppies. That seems to be a new level. You know, it's not just opportunistic. It seems to be almost sadistic and enjoying it. And again, the behavior is very, very odd. And it just sort of got my attention. I've just been noticing it recently. So let's look at a couple of key things. I mean, obviously, Colorado is a very high state. And we're going to get, I make a lot of videos about the effects of like microwave weapons, radio frequency weapons. I don't want to use the term microwave anymore. It's not. It's confusing people because microwaves are within radio frequency range. So they're RF weapons, technically. But things like Microwave energy can be applied at a distance. The appropriate technology can be adapted from existing radar units. So radar units can produce, which are the pulsed RF, which was used on the Cuban diplomats. This is what they were reporting here: irritability, nervousness, anxiety, dizziness. Actually, less people had tinnitus more people were irritable than actually had the tinnitus. Headache, cognitive problems, sleep problems. All of these things, if you have a headache, cognitive issues, sleep problems, and you're just generally uncomfortable, are going to even make you even more irritable. So we have what we know are the effects of RF weapons. Now, let's go to the world satellite map. And no one seems to want to talk about this. Obviously, here's the United States. These are Chinese satellites. These are Chinese only. These are Russian. These are all. Now, I don't know who the culprit is, but I'm just trying to hypothesize here a little bit. And I don't know why Colorado matters. Is their elevation have something to do with it? Who knows? But I mean, this is a Chinese satellite, and this is Colorado right here. It's probably northern New Mexico, Wyoming. I mean, a minute ago I was watching it, and literally a Chinese satellite went right over the top of Denver. There isn't one there now, but trust me, there was 20 minutes ago when I was doing this research. Every one of these satellites has radar on it. This is where we get our weather from a satellite that is sending down radar pulses to read where the clouds are. These are radio frequencies. The satellites communicate with Earth with radio frequencies. So the satellite can pulse radar down onto the Earth, and radar, of course, is radio distance and range, right? How does radar work? Radio detection and range, excuse me. It sends pulses to determine where items are located. I mean, even in World War II, it could tell you how many planes were there and how far away they were. And this is before the age of computing. This is before, of course, Moore's law started to play a significant role here with exponential growth. I mean, and Moore's law says that technology doubles every 18 months. That's fast. We're dumb about exponential growth. It's funny. I don't think people are connecting the dots here. You know, I mean, I am just hypothesizing, but clearly there's a problem. There's something weird going on. In the same city in Colorado, 2 different cops. There were 4 of them total. It was 3 of them involved in the breaking of the woman's arm and then laughing about it. And then another one goes and shoots a puppy and then won't let the owners get to the dog to render it medical care. The dog later dies, of course. She was shot in the face. This is just too much to ignore. If it's a coincidence, it's one heck of a coincidence. But at some point, it's hard to ignore coincidences like this. So I've said time and time again, you know, people say, well, the United States is this or that. Well, maybe it's doing something. Maybe it's testing something. Space Command is right there in Colorado. They're in Colorado Springs. They also have a place elsewhere in Fort Carson, I think it is, Fort Carson. It says right on it that they use these particular radar systems. This is what they look like, massive truck radar. Colorado might also, simply because it sits so high, be more susceptible to other ground-based radar, because if it's sitting higher, radars coming from the side might be able to have access to the people. But I mean, again, there's something going on here. I mean, we know for a fact the effects of pulsed RF on human health: irritability, nervousness, cognitive problems. We know from bioeffects of selected non-lethal weapons, which is the Army's testing, application of microwave hearing could, I don't like this, could facilitate a private message transmission. It may be useful to provide a disruptive condition to a person not aware of the technology. Not only might it be disruptive to the sense of hearing, but could be psychologically devastating if one suddenly heard voices in one's head. I mean, did this guy Chris Watts start hearing voices in his head and then kill his kids? Did the voices tell him to kill the wife and the kids? You see what I'm saying? Like, we have been ignoring this for far, far, far too long. And of course, this is 2008, NBC News. Army developing synthetic telepathy. Now, remember, this is reading of the EEG. In the beginning, they had to strap it to your head. Now that can be done wirelessly. So again, with the same radar, you can not only transmit information, but receive it. Because that's really what radar does, is it gives you information back to you. It bounces off, and then you get some of it back. You know where the object is, but you also learn things about the object, its size, if it's moving away from you or towards you, it tells you a ton. It's incredibly powerful technology. So it's just something to consider here. I mean, again, clearly there's a problem. You know, again, the first mass shooting, that guy that killed his wife and kids was not too far, somewhere in here, Frederick, right? He was right there. We got the 75-year-old getting tased in Colorado Springs. We got the woman having her arm broken. I mean, again, just this sadistic, evil behavior in Loveland and shooting the puppy. There was some other issues in Colorado Springs a little while ago. I forget. This is where Space Command is located. You know, and just one thing to always consider with all this, there is no federal law that prohibits non-consensual human experimentation that I'm aware of. And according to everybody, that's a true statement. That's a little vague, but essentially, you know, if the people who build these things want to test them on Americans, they're not breaking the law. I mean, yeah, it's immoral and unethical, but it's not illegal. What are they going to do? Get charged with a crime? You think some corporation? I mean, look at what we see corporations do all day long. Poison our food, air, and water, push pills out. Everybody's on pharmaceuticals, you know, maybe because they're irritable, nervous, anxiety, maybe because they're in pain, maybe because they're having sleep problems, no one's sleeping well. Are you noticing a pattern here? I know that the people that are watching my videos are already wise to this. They get it. Maybe somebody new comes along. But, like, start to connect the dots just a little bit. And one thing, this article here on Veterans Today about the Aaron Alexis shooting is just incredibly, it's full of information. It's incredibly, you know, eye-opening here. But I love some of this. Some of the stalkers do not appear to be aware of what they're doing. What does it say? Some of the stalkers appear oblivious to their role. Because, again, you can influence people's behavior without them even knowing it. Now, one thing that they're not saying here in Bioeffects, this is an outside communication being used to disrupt someone. Well, if you have an audio file or sample of someone's voice, you can transmit in their own voice. Much more sinister is to pass this off as an original thought. You see what I'm saying? If it's in your own inner voice, you might just think we think it all day long, like, oh, I want a cheeseburger. Oh, I should maybe get a drink of water. Well, that could be passed off as something like, oh, you know, I should eat 10 cheeseburgers and become overweight. Or I should honk my horn at that person on the highway and get involved in some road rage. Or, you know, hey, this woman deserves to have her arm broken. Yeah, you know, push a little harder. She deserves it. Hey, I should shoot this dog in the face. Who cares? You know, you can pass this off as original thought and influence people's behavior. They use that term mind control. It's not mind control, it's influencing. If someone had enough of a conscience, they'd say, God, that's terrible. Why would I even think something like that? And then not do it. But some people just go right ahead and do it. I mean, you have to start to kind of understand how this could be used. And there's nothing fancy here. It says right on the same page. The technology can be adapted from existing radar units. It requires no extrapolation to estimate its usefulness, which means we already know exactly what it can do. It can be applied at a distance. Yeah, duh, from existing radar units. I mean, it's just, again, I know I'm preaching to the choir here because most of the people that watch my videos already know the deal. But, you know, I think it goes beyond people who have, you know, extreme symptoms or targeted individuals. Or mass shootings. The exponential rise in mass shootings is obvious. I mean, Bioeffects was written in 1998. 1 year later, right here in Columbine was the first mass shooting. So the Army determines how they can destabilize a human and put voices into their heads. And a year later, two people decide to go shoot up their school, essentially for the first time ever. It's too much of a coincidence to ignore.